Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is the Piracy Show. Now, with today's show, I wanted to talk a little bit about capital ships and then a little bit about snub fighters as well. But I wanted to start off with capital ships because, I have read the comments where people have, questioned, the wisdom of using a capital ship for piracy. And the reason why I'm kind of looking for it is, one, it's because it's something that I would have to be sneaky with. It's something that I would have to be careful with, and I'd like to see how the game's stealth mechanics pan out and how the components relative to that pan out. If there are even capital sized components, it could be interesting. But the idea of being kind of like a lurking predator, almost like a nuclear attack sub or something like that, is very appealing to me. Anything involving kind of like a stealth gameplay is always appealing to me. And the other part is, I'm not getting it and thinking, oh, okay, I hope I can go toe-to-toe with a javelin. Oh, I hope I can go toe-to-toe with an Idris. No. The drive behind it, and hopefully if it has the firepower that I hope it does, is that when I do encounter a ship that I intend to pirate, that I can get those shields down that much faster, that I can knock a ship down that much faster and get started with the whole process of removing the cargo, stripping the components from the ship, parting it out completely, and more or less leaving it like, the old 80s movie trope of, someone parks an expensive car in a bad neighborhood. They walk out 5 minutes later and it's up on cinder blocks and everything is gone from like the stereo to the gas cap, right? That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And, when I look at the star map and I see all the limited jump routes, and then you got to kind of remember that there's a whole bunch of jump routes that we haven't discovered yet. So, things that we'll find in game, possibly systems that we'll find in game. There's probably going to be more than enough places to hide a ship like that. So that's kind of my aim with this ship. That's kind of what I'm looking for, is something that kind of opens up that higher earning potential with a ship like that. And that's really the driving force behind the decision. Going back like a while ago now, there was a very infamous quote that Ben Lesnick said when he said, oh, well, to earn a or was it Chris Roberts who said it? Either way, they said to get a constellation takes roughly about 60 hours of gameplay. You guys remember that? And then the forums exploded and people were saying, well, oh my god, 60 hours too long. Oh my god, 60 hours too short. Blah, blah, blah. Just devalued my Connie. Blah, and on and on and on. But what I was kind of looking at is, okay, so if a Connie, it represents such a huge investment of time and effort and in-game resources to get, how much would all the components from a Connie be worth? And there's no numbers attached to it. We don't have any values so that we can sit there and say, oh, it would be worth, XYZ amount of UEC. No, there isn't. There's none of that. But it does seem to place at least some kind of a value on it in your mind to say that, well, if one Connie, let's say the number is right, is worth 60 hours of gameplay for one person, then stealing and parting out a Connie would be worth how much to how many people are on the ship, and how long would it really take to, take that ship, take it down, and part it out amongst all those people, and then just pay them all out off of, the sale of the components and the cargo and all of that. That's what I'm kind of looking for, like even beyond a Connie, like a Reclaimer or an Orion or a Hull D or a Hull E. If you can catch one of those ships, how much would that be worth, and how much would that allow you or your crew to like leapfrog in terms of UEC? There'll probably be lean times just as there's going to be, fat times, but I think that having something like this opens up a potential for higher earnings. So I'm I'm very intrigued by the possibilities of the Polaris. Now, once again, it all remains to be seen if and when we do see the Polaris, right? Is the ship going to live up to my expectations, or is it going to live up to somebody else's expectations? Is it going to be the command and control vessel that some people want? Is it going to be the pocket carrier that other people want? Is it going to be the missile, the missile frigate that other people want? Blah, 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 on and on and on. Hopefully it's modular, and so people can configure it however they want it, but that is kind of my reasoning, my thinking behind this. Now, of course, this isn't going to represent new money spent. This is simply going to be moving money from old dead ideas into new ideas. And so I'm not overly concerned about doing so. And I think overall, in the long run, the risk will be worth it. And I mean, I say risk because in the end, it really isn't a risk because the money's already spent. It's already done. That door has already been opened and shut. So whatever happens is whatever happens. But I'm very, at first I was very ready, I just wasn't really enthusiastic about capital ships, period, in Piracy. But as I got to think about it, and now that we've started to see some of the larger ships, and namely the Freelancer and the Starfarer in game, and how long it takes to take them down, I'm very intrigued to see how tough this ship is going to be. And if it is indeed the Gamescom sale, and I know a lot of people don't think so, but if it is indeed that, and it is indeed flight ready, I know. But if it is, it's going to be a very, very interesting time. We'll just have to wait and see. We'll have to wait until Gamescom, right? I mean, it could be any number of things, really, but I mean, it's a new concept sale. It's going to be flight ready. It's going to be a reveal. Who knows? I mean, you can argue a lot of different points, but in the end, we don't know until we know, right? So we'll wait and see. Now, on to the subject of snub fighters. Now, for a while now, almost since the first lineup of ships came out, I mean, we saw the Idris, and we knew the Idris had a certain carrier capability to it, right? But it was always limited, 3 to 5 fighters. It wasn't. It wasn't going to break any records. And of course, there were people who were talking about, well, you can kind of cheese that, right? Because you can just get a guy who's going to log on, and then his fighter's just going to appear in the hangar, and then he takes off, and then he logs off, and his fighter disappears in the hangar. As long as the ship's there, it doesn't matter. So technically, you can put as many fighters on as you want. Now, I don't think it's going to work that way. I think they're going to tie it into vehicle slots on the ship, and there's just going to be there are 3 people there logged on or logged off, and that's going to be the way it is. I don't think that they're going to allow us to cheese that mechanic like that. I mean, it seems pretty obvious, and I think it would be something that they probably wouldn't want. But what I wanted to talk about with snub fighters was, certainly with the Caterpillar release, and the Dragonfly to go along with it, and all the information that we got recently, or actually I should say the Dragonfly release and the Caterpillar sale to go along with it. But the Caterpillar as a carrier for these snub fighters has kind of gotten me thinking about snub fighters a little bit. And there are so many ships that do carry snub fighters, right? I mean, there's a ton of them. Got Carrick, Reclaimer, 890 Jump, Endeavor. Or wait, the Endeavor I think actually carries a little Cutlass Red or something like that. Either or. But there are so many ships that carry little snub fighters. Now, some of them aren't fighters, some of them are more utility-based vessels, but I mean, I think it stands to reason, probably with some of them, if not all, you'll be able to swap that out with possibly a snub fighter like the P-52 or the P-72. And when we've been talking about fighters and bringing fighters along with our fleets into deep space, and that was always a big concern. How much range does it have? How much range does it have? And I think it was one of the main driving factors behind people wanting the pocket carrier for the longest time. I'm just wondering if we aren't just kind of skipping over snub fighters because we want bigger, safer things, like we want to bring like a bigger, safer thing to combat, and snub fighters aren't always the safest things in the universe. You know what I mean? And so, in games we tend to like things that are kind of self-sustaining, that are a little bit safer to play with. You know what I mean? Take for instance, Armored Warfare. The Abrams certainly is a very safe platform to play from. It can get in big hits, it can do a lot of damage, it can take a lot of damage, well, it can deflect a lot of damage if you're playing it well. It's a solid platform to play the game in, and that main battle tank certainly is. I mean, you can certainly get away with a lot of things with something that's as heavily armored and as resilient as this, and so it feels like a very safe way to play the game. You don't really have to worry too much about your own health. You can kind of plug away at the game, and you really have to make some critical mistakes to suffer. But with some of the faster, smaller, lighter armed things, well, you can also do just as well, and usually there's a pretty decent trade-off. Now in Star Citizen, I think it's going to be different. I think it's going to be more a question of maneuverability and speed. Well, not so much speed with the Dragonfly. I mean, I think everybody knows by now that Dragonfly is slated to have 180 meters a second, which I think is a tad on the low scale, but speed and maneuverability can be weapons. And I mean, even though the guns on this Terminator don't hit as hard as the guns on the Abrams, a death by 1,000 cuts is still a death, and in some cases it can be a pretty devastating death at that. But the point is, like, I don't really think that snub fighters really are all that bad. And I mean, I've been kind of forcing myself to play with them a little bit lately, and I've actually been enjoying them. Now for PvP, I don't really think they have the oomph to really kind of drive it home. Solo, as a group, as part of a swarm, I think that they're obviously going to be a lot better, especially if you've got mixed weaponry. Like some people are using, say, distortion guns, and other people are using straight up normal energy weapons or projectile weapons. I think the results will improve. But I think overall, I think snub fighters are worth another look. I mean, when you think about the huge wagon train that we're talking about bringing into space just to bring our fighters along, a Starfarer for refueling, a Crucible for repair, possibly an Idris for repair, refuel, rearm, however you want to work it all out. I mean, that's a huge wagon train to bring just to bring fighters to the battlefield to defend your fleet. But if a lot of your fleet has at least one snub fighter or possibly multiple snub fighters attached to them, yeah, one snub fighter isn't that much of a threat, but multiples can definitely be something that you would have to worry about. And I mean, speaking as a pirate, if I'm looking on my radar screen and I just see one red blip, or say 5 red blips, I might not think too much of that, especially if I'm, rolling around with a fleet. But if all of a sudden all those blips double or triple, then I have to start, exercising the better part of valor, and I have to kind of be like, okay, maybe this isn't the easy mark that I thought it was, and maybe I need to back off, because, piracy is all about profit. It's not about, when you see there was the thread a while ago, it was like, so how do you pirates think you're going to go about attacking convoys? And it was like, well, it's easy. We won't attack convoys. We'll look, it's kind of like a pack of wolves. You don't go after the herd, you go after the ones that are separated from the herd, you know? And I think that, I don't know, maybe that's a possibility to explore with the game, is to kind of look at the snub fighters again and ask the question, and maybe this is worth it. Now, of course, snub fighters are delicate, but if you have multiple game accounts, or if you can make an alt, you can just have an alt pilot who's kind of like a disposable soldier who's just there to live, die, repeat. And if things don't work out for him, well, wake up, do it again. So that way your main character doesn't have to worry about having to go through the whole death of a spaceman thing and all the annoyances that'll probably come along with that. But at the same time, you can kind of, you know, you have that disposable fighter there with you, whether it's flown by an NPC or flown by you or flown by a member of your crew on an alt. And if you have enough of them in your particular fleet or in your convoy or whatever, I think that in and of itself might not be quite the danger of a group of fighters, but it might be enough to dissuade an enemy from taking a swipe at you and possibly going, okay, let's look for something a little bit easier. You know, going back to when I was talking about the Polaris, I mean, trying to be sneaky and be cagey, you're going to be looking for the targets that you can get down quickly, and something that has a whole bunch of snub fighters, possibly not the best idea. You got to think, okay, well, possibly these guys are all talking on TeamSpeak, so even if I jam a distress transmission with a herald, they can probably just hop rooms in TeamSpeak and say, hey, we're under attack, we're here, come help us out. Once you start seeing a whole bunch of guys together, I mean, that kind of speaks to a certain level of organization, and that alone, I think, would be enough of a reason for you to kind of reassess the situation and possibly pick a different target. Finally, I wanted to end off with one other possibility for the big reveal. Now, I know this one is going to be kind of a stretch, but consider it. Just consider it, because there have been some indicators that things could go this way, and there is a precedent for stuff like this happening in the past. Now, in the past, everyone's familiar with the Retaliator, right? The bomber. The Retaliator, went up for sale. It had its whole LTI the whole long time ago. And then it came back up as the Retaliator base once again with, a concept sale with LTI, right? What if the concept sale, the reveal, and the flight ready ship is a new variant of the Idris? A Squadron 42 variant of the Idris. Something we have not seen. I mean, following the same rules of the Retaliator, technically that would be a concept sale, wouldn't it? And we have gotten indications that the Idris is very close to flight ready. I don't think it's a great possibility, but it is a possibility. Certainly a very interesting one. And I mean, if you're at Gamescom, you got everybody watching you, you want to make a big splash, you want to get the name of the game out there, I kind of feel like you want it to be a big ship. You want it to be something that's going to make a lot of people go wow. And who knows? Now, of course, the argument against it, beyond the obvious ones, is something that expensive is a concept sale that isn't going to appeal to a lot of people. But it's definitely a concept sale that might turn a few heads. Anyways, those are my random mumblings for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and thanks.
Quantum travel initiated.